Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a motivational speaker and coach, a defensive tactic instructor, founder of the Stronger Than Drugs Foundation. He's a 7-time world champion and 2-time All-American champion, was featured on A&E's Legends of the Martial Arts, featured on TNT in Wesley Snipes' Masters of the Martial Arts, was also featured in one of my favorite shows, WMAC Masters, and so much more. Please welcome my guest today, Willie the Bam Johnson. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm great, sir. Thanks for having me here today.
Good. I'm glad we could do this. So what we do with all my guests, we kind of go back to the beginning. I want to know where that first spark, that first interest in martial arts came from, and kind of what age and what led the beginning of your martial arts journey.
For me, it was Chinese Connection, Bruce Lee's Chinese Connection.
Nice.
Back in the 70s, when Kung Fu movies were in every inner city movie house that you could possibly imagine. And along with a black exploitation film. So they were like the saving grace for many people. And there's this one time my parents were so overprotected growing up in the city of Baltimore before it got really crazy. And they would never let me go to the movie theaters by myself or anything. And I was, as a child, I was going through some devastating things at home, things that was happening to me from outside family members, real tragic, emotional things. But I always had this natural instinct where I didn't want to increase the pain and pressure on my parents. Okay. So I would always shield the things that was happening to me, the violence I was seeing, just the physical things that was being done to me as a child. And I remember my mom let me go with a next door neighbor this one time to go and see a movie. And I remember going down to the Hippodrome Theater in Baltimore City. And man, it was so many people. I mean, from, around the corner, around this corner, around that corner, just to get in and see, because remember back then they had those commercials. You would be sitting home watching TV and 5 Fingers of Death or Bruce Lee, Chinese Connection. And, you're just so hyped. And I got a chance to go in and see that movie, man. And when I seen Bruce Lee, I didn't see Bruce Lee, I seen me.
Okay.
I seen it was a moment for me to become a hero to many kids at a young age that was probably going through what I was going through and didn't know how to get it out. So Bruce Lee turned my life around. He inspired me at that moment at 6 years old.
Wow. Okay. And then at what age did you first actually seek out martial arts then and start taking lessons?
Right after that. I mean, because remember back then, martial arts wasn't that commercial, right. So it was like people who had returned from the war. There was community centers. I mean, there was people teaching in a community, in the back alleys or in the project buildings in the top lock. Everybody, back then martial arts was in those communities. It was everywhere. I mean, everybody was making nunchucks and everybody was flipping on pissy mattresses. I mean, the culture was so rich. It was, it was just so wonderful. And everybody wanted to share and come out the movie theater emulating techniques. And I just happened to get caught up with an instructor by the name of Jody, who was a black belt in Shotokan karate. And he started teaching us in the we call it the top lot. And after that, man, it just lit a fire. I just was doing whatever I can do to just emulate what I was seeing in the movie theaters, along with getting formal instructions from the guy in the community.
Okay. And so what was it about that Shotokan? What was it about that specific style that you really enjoyed?
I don't think it was the style. I'm always I'm a creative person, so I don't think it was really the style. It was just the art. Okay. It didn't matter what style it was. I mean, when you combine, creatively expressing what you've seen on the screen and flipping on the pissy mattresses and, jumping off of roofs and all these things that we did as a kid back then, martial arts just added to my fuel to express myself so I can get through the pain of stuff that was happening to me in my household and that I was seeing in my household as well.
Okay. What are some things you remember about that first instructor, and how long did you train with him?
I mean, well, I think the one thing you had to earn your way to get in class. They had something called the beat up wagon. You know, that ain't the actual term. They call it the F wagon, but
Yep.
it was probably like 10 guys on one side, 10 students on the other side. And you had to walk through and they beat you up and spit on you and did all this stuff. And if you made it to the other side, you were able to be a part of the martial arts school.
Wow.
You know, they call it gang initiation, but that was class initiation. That's, that's because it wasn't really, I mean, one thing I want to clip, a lot of times people heard me talk and they think that my family, we were poor, but back then poor was, if I tell my dad that stuff, that was like a richness. I mean, we ate, it wasn't like what you see today. I mean, it wasn't poverty. It was great. It was a great life, man. I mean, it was struggles. Who don't have struggles? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Definitely.
So that moment, just going through that, I wanted it that bad. I just, Bruce Lee lit something inside of me and it just gave me a chance to search for how I can express it. It didn't matter what art. And I was willing to do whatever. If he said jump off the roof, I probably jumped off the roof. That's all it was,
Okay. So how long did you stay in Shotokan then, your first style?
Well, because we kept going from person to person and community to community. Remember, it wasn't really about belts. It wasn't really about, it was about the tradition, but it wasn't really about these belts. So it wasn't really about all this, commercialization. It was just art, I mean, how can you put a label on art, or how can you put a label on, you give, they give. And before you know it, you was with somebody else and they were giving. So, I mean, the creative moment, I think more what was happening for me, I found the way to emulate what I was seeing in the movies because I lived in a movie house. So any movie I went to see, I was taking pictures, I was filming it, I was stealing magazines, I was stealing books. I was doing whatever it takes to feed the fire of what martial arts had lit inside of me. It freed me from me.
Okay. At what age, when did competition start for you? When was that something that piqued your interest and you started doing the competition side of martial arts?
Well, I think it all connected, just that once again, because of the freedom of expression, that the way martial arts was being taught and expressed at that time. And getting those magazines, stealing the official karate magazines, the Karate Illustrated. When I say steal, I don't want it to come across like, you were just taking it and you just didn't care. It was like, once again, I needed something to feel this dream that was lit inside of me. I wanted out. I wanted better. I wanted something more. And when you fall in love with something so passionately as a child, you didn't know what you were doing. You just wanted it so bad. And at that time, parents didn't understand the benefits of martial arts. My parents didn't have a lot of extra money to pay for martial art magazines. Nobody seen the value in that stuff. I mean, it wasn't I didn't even call the books and the magazines commercial. I think even Black Belt back then in official karate, they were showing you the authentic expression of what martial arts was doing around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And tournaments at that time was the way to get famous. Bruce Lee gave me a desire to want to become, a superhero. I wanted to be a movie action star just like him. I didn't know he was fighting for his people. It wasn't a racial thing. It was just a human thing. And when I seen those magazines, I started emulating what was in those magazines. It kept me alive. And I knew that the way to make it back then, Bruce Lee got discovered at a tournament. Everybody got discovered at a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they got discovered at a tournament, they got a chance to be in the movie. And before you know it, they got famous. And if they got in the magazines, they got put in movies. That's how it was back then. The only place to find martial arts was at tournaments. So the best thing to do at a young age is to figure out, how do I follow the path? Because nobody around me, like the day the kids are fortunate, you got everybody telling you, give you positive reinforcement. Back then, wasn't nobody giving you no positive reinforcement. They didn't want you in the martial art class. After all, you was a child, so you had to prove yourself. There wasn't a lot of kids in it back then. I think I was probably like one of the youngest people amongst teenagers and adults. So you had to really prove yourself. Nobody, I'm not going to say they was against it, but the benefits wasn't really as obvious right now as it is right now. I mean, but it's art. Once again, when you fall in love with something, music or whatever, I mean, it just lights something inside of you. And you just do whatever it takes to be able to, to bring it alive and grow with it. And at a young age, I knew that that's what I wanted. And I've always been creative. I did what I can do to find entrepreneurship ways, at that time in the 70s, and to get money, to get magazines, sometimes steal magazines. help people out. I just always had this, what I'm doing now, I always did as a kid. I don't know why. It's just something that gave me reasons and ways to adjust and hustle and earn money and steal magazines and do whatever I could do to manifest this dream. Does that make sense?
Oh, makes perfect sense. So do you remember your first ever competition?
Yeah, my first tournament was, I think I was like 16. It was the All-American. No, it was the battle. It was not the Battle Ball. It was the Condi's Karate Tournament. And I got second place, and I got third place in forms, and I got second place in fighting.
Okay.
And back then I was making up forms because we didn't really do forms. We did more fighting than anything. But because I was doing street gymnastics, I was into the music and all that stuff, the culture of the urban environment. I always knew that I wanted something more, but fighting was what we did. By that time, I had now got another, because there was other people that I was working with. I was doing boxing. I was doing, you go to a Taekwondo school and I can watch, and the guy, they see you got a desire to want to learn. They tell you come into class, Kung Fu. We had a Kung Fu school in the city of Baltimore, Tony Lin. So it was a lot of journeys, in my resume. It's kind of hard to remember everything,
right?
But I got most of it on my resume because it was like traveling through a forest of discovery. And because I was so passionate, people welcomed me. I had my own homemade dojo. That was the one thing I did in the projects. I had made my own dojo.
Nice.
I made heavy bags. I made Wing Chun dummies. I made weapons. I was making my own uniforms. Everything I seen in those movies, in those magazines and books, I was making myself prepare for this tournament. And I do know one of the, Cynthia Rothrock, Benny the Jet Arquitez, they all had custom-made uniforms. Benny had his jet on his pants leg, and Cindy always had a uniform for forms, a uniform for weapons, a uniform for the nighttime finals. And then at that same time, Wushu was becoming popular with Jet Li and so forth.
Right.
And they had all these elaborate uniforms. So, before I went into the tournament, I did know that I could sew. So I started sewing my own uniforms and making my own uniforms. So when I went to that first tournament, I had a custom-made BAM's uniform.
Very cool. Where did the nickname come from? I'm curious.
Well, my uncle named me Bam Bam because I got they say I had a lot of energy. I was always getting into stuff. My wife said my youngest son today, she said, this is you. This is a spitting image of you because he's so creative. He's so energized. He just loves creatively doing things. And that's what my parents say I was. So my uncle called me. He gave me the name Bam Bam. That's what it was called. So when I first started competing, they used to call me Willie Bam Bam Johnson.
Okay.
So that was the name I had when I was competing. And that's what I had on all my uniforms, Bam Bam. So, it's funny. I'm listening to an audio tape about how FUBU got started. Mm-hmm. But that's how I got started in tournaments. I was making my own uniforms. I knew what I had to do. Once again, at a young age, I knew. And nobody didn't stop me. I'm not going to say they didn't support me, but they didn't stop me.
Right.
Because it was so new. And if it made you happy, they didn't know what to do. But sometimes my dad would say, come demonstrate the nunchucks and things like that. So I did whatever I can do. And so when I made that plan to go to my first tournament, by then my main instructor that gave me my first black belt at that time, his name was Kenneth Parker.
Okay.
And by that time, we were in a community center called McKim's Community Center.
Okay. Do you remember, how much do you remember your first black belt test? And talk a little bit about that.
That's funny. That experience, because I had my own dojo and I was teaching kids in the community. So I had a dojo and we lived in the projects. We had 3 rooms. I had a room, my sister had a room, my mom had a room. So when my sister moved out the house, my mom gave me the room. I turned the whole room. It was like, if you ever look at some of my books, you'll see Bruce Lee pictures all over the wall, from the ceiling down to the floor, on the doors, everything. So it was like this whole room. The walls were painted with Bruce Lee photos. And I was, like I said, I was making heavy bags. I was making weapons. So everybody knew in the projects that, whoa, this guy is crazy. They was calling me the Black Bruce Lee. Everything I did was nothing but martial arts. By that time, everybody else had faded away from martial arts. The creative expression, because they were going into other things. But I was holding on to it. And around 12 or 13, I was teaching kids. I guess I was helping kids stop from being bullied. And I was teaching kids, and I was creating my own little style and doing all these things. And one day the kids said, hey, man, let's go over to this center called McKim's Community Center. I think they got karate over there. So that we went over. The guy still at McKim's to this day. His name is the White One. So we went over, and I still remember the conversation. They said, hey, you should let this guy teach karate here. And I'm like 13 years old. And I was like, yeah, can I teach karate here? And the White said, get away from here, boy. You too young to teach karate. You ain't got no diploma. Get out of here. Get away from here, kid. So, he ran me away. So we went in the back of McKim's, and we started doing all these back flips, running up the wall, flipping off the buildings. And this guy, Kenneth Parker, came out, who was a black belt, Kang Kwan. He was a yoga master, and he was also expert in Wing Chun and all these other forms of martial arts. So he came back and he seen this, and he said, hey, look, guys, I'm going to start a club. Y'all come on in here. So he guided all that creative energy. Okay. And he started a martial arts club. So now we in there doing yoga. I'm like 13. We doing burning pots. I mean, we in there sparring. We doing everything. And I always tell people it was so funny because we're in the heart of the projects. What happens that you will always get these older people that will walk by the dojo and they would challenge you. They would come in and say, hey, what's this karate stuff? Can you guys use that stuff? And because I was so natural and my instructor saw I was hitting my time, he would always make me challenge the guys. And I mean, at that moment, man, I was like undefeated. I'd be a young kid fighting these grown people. But, when you creatively just passionate about what you do, I don't even think it was about winning or losing or ego. It was just pride and just expressing what you felt inside your soul. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. Makes very good sense. I like that.
Yeah. And then, I tested for my first black belt and I had to fight my teacher. Got a good lick in on him, but he got a lot more licks in on me. And, we broke boards. We were doing yoga. I didn't understand why we were burning pots back then. Before anybody, after every class, he would put these pots in front of the class, and he would burn them. He was into all the nutritional stuff. But one of the things that's so important, and without me getting emotional, he never stopped believing in me. I was writing movie scripts. He would correct the spelling. I wanted to be a black superstar in films like Bruce Lee was for his people. He supported me. When I wanted to go to tournaments, he would say, go. When I wanted to train with other people like Master Garcia Davis, and then I wanted to go and train with Master Brown, he supported me. He allowed me to be me. If it wasn't for him giving me that moment, I'd have never met Master Brown, who took it all to the next level for me. I'd have never went to the tournaments. I went all by myself. So that whole experience of just letting us be kids.
Right.
He just let us be kids, and when I'm saying this, I think about Jerry Fontenez, one of my brothers, and one of the greatest sports karate champions of all times. I remember one time a couple of kids was playing and we were having a conversation at Master Alan Goldberg's event. And I said to all the kids, I said, hold up, man, wait. I said, guys, stop. And Jerry said, hold up, let me get it for you. He said, hey, kids, stop playing. And everybody just broke out laughing. And I realized that we now in a society where we don't let kids be kids anymore.
Right.
They let me be a kid. And if they wouldn't have let me be a kid, I wouldn't have became the person I am today. And that's what my black belt test was. It was setting me free to be okay with me and live my dreams.
Very cool. And then as far as competition, do you remember what tournament was your first big win, your first national championship win? As
Henry Cho's All-American Championships, Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow. Madison Square Garden. Very cool.
Madison Square Garden. At that time, S. Henry Cho's was a nationally rated tournament on the East Coast. Because if you follow the Karate Illustrated ratings, you knew which tournaments were the big tournaments. And back then, they were controlled by Karate Illustrated. Karate Illustrated was the big controlling circuit for all the tournaments back then. That's why you got on the cover, and that was the sister magazine and the Black Belt magazine. So Karate Illustrated was the sports karate magazine. Official Karate also covered it, but the real ratings was in Karate Illustrated. It was the Karate Illustrated ratings. And I remember seeing, S. Henry Cho's, and you heard about Ron Van Cleef and all these great people, Steve, was it William Oliver, all the greats, Cynthia Rothrock winning this tournament, and nobody knew. Once again, I just knew what I wanted, and I figured out a way to write letters and send to local people to get people to sponsor me. And I got a counselor at the community center. And I was like 16 at this time. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew to take it to the next level, I had to go to a tournament. And these people just rallied behind me. They helped me get, all I asked for was enough money to catch the bus. I never been on a bus in my life before, wow. But I wanted to get to this tournament so bad. So all I asked for was enough money to get on a bus. I ain't know nothing about hotel rooms and entry fee. Entry fee was like $25, maybe $35, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they helped me get that money. My mom didn't know where I was going. Nobody knew where I was going. And back then, that's when New York wasn't in New York what it is right now. It was like the actual picture of the Warriors. It was, you thought about New York back then, man. You thought that, man, you would get murdered. All these bad things was happening. What happened to you? And I remember catching the Greyhound bus, and I'm going through that, going through the tunnel, making it down to the main bus terminal. And I get off the bus and I'm fearful, man. I mean, that's like, I've never been to this place. I don't know where I'm going. And I didn't even realize that Madison Square Garden was right up the street. I could have walked like 3 blocks up from where the bus station was at. But I was so, so nervous and so unaware. I caught a cab, and then he let me out in front of that Forum, man, the Madison Square Garden. And back then, tournaments were huge. Mm-hmm. And I just remember seeing all those people. I didn't know Madison Square Garden was Madison Square Garden. To me, it was just a tournament. It's not until I get older that I knew, man, my first win was at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
And I remember going in there, Ron Van Cleef, everybody was there. I mean, to go to New York and win in New York, you had to be good. Nobody respected Kung Fu like that back then. Kung Fu was like dance. Mm-hmm. And I remember my weapon was broadsword and my form was 24B. And I remember going in there, knowing how to register. And I go in there and I got tied up with New York's #1 forms champion at that time and weapons champion, Aziz. And if you heard this Aziz, you know what I'm talking about. And I couldn't believe it. I got tied up doing a Kung Fu form with New York's best.
Wow.
We had to do a tiebreaker, and guess what? I won. I could not believe it, man. I was preached to be on TV with Ron Van Cleef and everybody. I didn't understand any of that. And plus, I didn't have enough money to get a hotel, and I had to get back on the bus before the final started. So I won, and I had to run and jump back on the bus and come back home.
Oh, wow. Dang. That's an experience, though. Definitely something you'll never forget.
I never had that. But if you dream and you want it that bad, if it wasn't for any of that, and that's what I say to anybody, don't block no one's dream. If it wasn't for any of that, man, I wouldn't be who I am right now. When I say that, I think about my mom. My mom didn't understand it. And I remember after I did that and I got what it was like, I started going to the Diamond Nationals. I started going to every tournament. I started going to all these tournaments. And before you know it, I was like the youngest kid competing against adults. And I was recognized by Karate Illustrated as one of the best competitors competing. I was fighting. I was doing forms. I was doing weapons. I was doing everything. And I was coming in alone. I was doing whatever I had to do, and I was winning. I remember my first Diamond Nationals with Kevin Thompson. I got 8th place. But back then, 8th place was like a first place at a national tournament today.
Yep.
And I kept showing up. I would be on the bus for 3 days, and I would get off the bus, and I would run into the tournament, compete, and get back on the bus. That's how bad I wanted it. And it was because of that my mom would sit at the door every time I returned home. And I don't think she, oh, man, sorry. Ooh. I don't think she understood what I was doing because I didn't show fear. What was her happiest moments that I would come back with a 6-foot trophy and she would stand at the door and she would be so happy because I don't think she ever seen someone live a dream and be so passionate for something. At that time, I started, my goals had changed and I just wanted to get my mom out the projects and I wanted my mom to be happy. Ooh, sorry, bro.
You're good. You're good. Take your time.
It was no longer selfishly for me. I just wanted my mom to have the greatest things in the world. And at that time, all you had to do was get in the movies and get famous. And, you can change everybody's life. And things were going that way, but along at the same time, during that time too, in those communities, then crack cocaine and drugs started becoming into that community in the 80s. And now all of my friends that I was friends with and doing great things with, they were now doing these bad things and violence was hitting me. And I was just in turmoil. I think I call it, I was going through the pits of hell when I would come from a tournament because I had to go through all the violence to get to my house. And it was hard for a kid because nobody understood what we were going through now. There were times that changed from the good fun martial art classes and practicing and flipping. You couldn't be on the playground because it was shooting and crack vials and needles all over the place and so forth.
I'm glad you mentioned the Diamond Nationals. That's actually the first time I ever saw you compete in person was at the Diamond Nationals.
You did?
I'm from Minnesota, and I want to say it was 90 or 91. I can't remember, but I didn't compete myself. I went down to watch a friend compete and just support him, and we went down about 5 or 6 years in a row. And I remember seeing you compete at least once, if not twice. So And I also
That's
remember,
awesome.
I think you were also there right around the time promoting WMAC Masters too, when that came out. So
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I probably have your autograph on a magazine cover somewhere. Long time ago. So speaking of that, so what led to the Hollywood thing? I know you said that was something you wanted to do. What kind of led to you breaking into Hollywood?
That because it was something, the plan, once again, you got to plan your work and work your plan. And I always, like I said, I always put Bruce Lee pictures. I knew what I wanted. I followed the path of what, that's the power of reading. That's the power of magazines. That's the power. Remember, we didn't have social media back then. So those Black Belt magazines and Karate Illustrated and official karate magazines, they gave you the formula. If you read it, you study, they told you what to do. And I say again to anybody out there, don't stop your kid that want to draw something and put it up on the wall. That's a vision board. You know what I'm saying? That's the goal. Don't criticize. Let that authenticity just be expressed. And because I was doing that, I knew what I wanted to do. If I could win enough tournaments, I can get in the films. And then I understood, because I was doing gymnastics and I was doing martial arts and wushu was becoming bigger, I knew that I really needed to expand my training with someone else. And that's when I got with Grandmaster Dennis Brown. He accepted me as a student for exchange, me sharing my gymnastics with his students. And that's when I think it really took off, because now he had gave me a chance to go to China. That was the first step. That's when China first opened up. So all these things parallel to how I got to be in Hollywood, because in order to win, you had to be the best. I just didn't want to be no has-been. I wanted to win. I wanted to be the best. So when Master Brown gave me a chance to go as one of the second troops to go to mainland China, and I got a chance to go there and train. And once again, this creative little kid never thought that I would ever go to China. My mom had passed away. So now I was taking care of myself, and Master Brown was there to help me. And he made a bet with me. He said, if you can get X amount of students, I was running a karate school now, a real school. I was like now 18, running my own karate school, kung fu school at that time. And he made a bet. He said, I'm going to take you to China if you can get X amount of students. And I got those students, and I couldn't believe it. A little kid from the projects going to China, that was bigger than meeting Bruce Lee.
Wow.
Because that's when China first opened up. So when you went there, it wasn't a commercial China. It was like real hardcore training, 3 workouts a day. Wushu was just becoming popular with Jet Li. The Shaolin Temple hadn't even really, it was just about ready to take off. So that movie that changed the whole face of Kung Fu films, martial art films, was Jet Li with Wushu. And when we went there, because Master Brown knew how to speak fluent Chinese, he let us be able to train with the people. He let us train with the village, the poor people. That's where you got the real art. We learned more in 30 days than most people probably learned in 2 years going to China.
Wow.
And I was working out every day. I knew that coming from the ghetto and to get this goal, there's no way I cannot make the best. But at the same time, in order for me to come back and win, to get what I needed to get, I couldn't learn a new form or a new weapon. So I went there and I watched them. I swear to you, anybody will tell you, and it's that little kid that can pick up something just like that. My little son can do it now. I watched them do a 4-line form. I comprehend as many moves as I can. And when they said, come up and demonstrate, so they can split us in advanced groups and beginners group, I couldn't go in the beginners group. I had to go in the advanced group. I went in the advanced group, and they could not believe that I already knew 4 lines of a form, a broadsword form. And because of my strength, of how I was demonstrating, they asked me to fight with their world champion, Sundial champion, and I beat him. And they recognized me as one of the best Americans that ever trained in China at that time.
Wow.
And guess what? When I came home, my dear friend who was the number one forms competitor in the world, Charlie Lee, I got a chance to beat him.
Nice.
Not 1 time, but 2 times. That changed my whole life then.
Yeah, I remember watching Charlie compete too. So there were some great competitors back then, man. It was so fun to watch.
That's my friend. So I want to say it because back then, nobody was striving to be better. We were striving to win, and we motivated each other. So I don't want it to come across like I'm better than him, he less than me. That at that time, it was a family. We cheered for you to do your best so I can pull out my best. And that's that's what took me to the next level. And before you know it, if it wasn't for me, after going through some negative things, and you can see it, you can look at my documentary, and I done talked about all that stuff over and over. And it's like it was a defining moment for me. But at that moment, when I really got a chance to turn my life back around and I came home and started competing again, that's when my instructor named me the Bam.
Okay.
So now before I was Bam Bam, when I went there, when my mom passed away and I was like lost, I came home from China. But, once again, remember, you're a little kid, got to take care of yourself. Nobody understood the violence that you see today. Nobody understood what it was like to drop me off in the projects at that time. And I had to walk from the sidewalk to my house. They didn't know what I was going through. They didn't understand the battle that I was fighting just to live that dream. Am I making sense?
Oh, perfect sense. Yes, 100%.
So even when I made that mistake, when I made that mistake, I remember, and I tell many people, I dropped to my hands and knees and I said, God, if you give me another chance to use my martial arts to help people, I would never abandon you. And that just changed everything. I started practicing every day. I got back on my goals. And when I got a chance to go back to what I'm doing, I went back to competing. And when I came home, my instructor said, you know what? You the BAM. Ain't nobody else out here like that. You are the BAM. So you're going to get rid of that one. You are the BAM. And then that's when I started using the nickname, the BAM. And, before you know it, I was writing articles, doing things, getting back in the magazine, get my name back out there. Everybody surrounded me and helped me at that time. John Chung, George Chung, Helen Chung, Ho Sung Pak, Ho Young Pak, Richard Brandon, Larry Lamb. Everybody, because they knew where I was at. When I got in trouble, I was like, I had achieved everything. And at that moment, I had lost everything. But most importantly, I got more than what I had lost, because now I understood why I got what my purpose was. And my purpose is what I'm doing right now. And if it wasn't for Richie Brandon, that friendship, once again, and I remember, it was my first dream come true. I'm getting ready to get on the cover of Karate Illustrated magazine.
Just thinking about Richard Brandon, I used to love watching him compete, and I was just looking him up, and I can't believe it's been 9 years since he passed away already.
Yeah, and that was my best friend. He was my number one competitor, along with Kevin Thompson. God bless both of their soul. But Richie was the one who, when I had to get on the front cover of Karate Illustrated magazine, I called Richie, and it was me and Richie Brandon on my first cover shot, and that was Karate Illustrated. And I remember we were so close, and I remember him telling me, like, man, at the battle, man, they doing some type of film audition, and I'm sending it out, because even though at that time, not just was I writing articles, but I was sending videotapes. I was making my videotapes. I was doing whatever I can do to send them to Hollywood producers. Mm-hmm. All these different people, Keith Steinberg at that time, all those people, because Season Films was doing movies in the United States. So I was just trying to get my hand in that out there in Hollywood, but it just wasn't panning out that way until Richie told me about that audition. And we went to Diamond Masters. They had all the best martial artists. And at that time, I knew what I wanted. And they said, hey, so what do you want your character name to be? I said, the BAM. And they said, what costume did you want? I already had it planned out. Nice. So everything you see me represent at WMAC Masters, I already had it written out. Once again, that little kid never lost sight of what he wanted to do. And that just changed my life.
That's awesome. I wish they'd bring that show back. That was such a good show. So important. And it's kind of sad that it only lasted 13 episodes, I believe.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because we're doing a WMAC Masters, the BAM's Quest for the Dragon Star reunion at this year's U.S. Capitol Classics, where we got Hakeem Austin coming in. Cool. We got Christine Bannon coming in. We got Great Wolf coming in. We got Olympia coming in. We got Eric Betts coming in. We got Isaac Florentine coming in. This is giving the fans, because I didn't know how powerful the show was until Demetrius D'Angelo of Urban Action Showcase told me the influence that this show had for so many people, and how we set the bar for everyone, and what you see now with Marvel and everything. And it was because of that, because we wasn't doing it to be famous. We were just doing it to have fun. We were competitors. We didn't know we'd get paid. Yep. It was like, we the best in the world, and it was no egos. It was just fun. We were sitting around making money off of doing what we loved doing. We didn't know we were making history.
And I've been lucky. I've got to interview a few people from that show now. Christine's been on the show. Herb Perez has been on the show. Carmichael Simon's been on my show. So yeah, I've had a few people from there on it. And Michael Bernardo is going to be coming up. I'm supposed to be interviewing him too. So yeah, and Hakeem too. I believe he's on my list too. So yeah. I was 20 years old and I loved that show. It wasn't just for kids.
That's awesome. And that's the power of what's happening. Everybody been calling for a reboot. And then it's amazing that you said that, so what we're doing at a time, the concept behind it, at a time when kids need heroes, And we going through COVID, and kids are just lost. Nobody knows what to do. Everybody trying to fight to keep their jobs, keep their marriages, keep everything together. Nobody is really focusing on the kids. And I know from my own kids, I said, no, we got to do something to recognize the kids. Not just do we do a movie during COVID, but we also came up with a concept where let's create a Heroes Award. We hear you, we see you, and we want to recognize you because heroes are 1 out of 100. And out of any sport during COVID, when everything shut down, kids were still practicing martial arts. Yep. So when I came back, I said, let's create a Heroes Award. And what better people to come out and show people that dreams can come true than to get the real life heroes that still are in martial arts and use martial arts to inspire and change their own lives and millions of other people's lives than the cast and crew of WMAC Masters.
That's awesome.
And that's happening at the U.S. Capitol Classic. So if anybody listens to this, come out, you get a chance to meet them. You get a chance to talk to them. You get a chance to see. Our goal is to film to possibly film a historical documentary, something, an independent type of thing, just to talk about the experience and all the things that's going on with the people that's showing up and give people a chance to say, look, fans, we didn't know that we inspired you, but now we want you to know what it was like on that show. And also the guy that's doing the first ever book on the secrets and historical documentation of what was really happening. Yep. I mean, he got interviews. He's got some stuff that he's going to blow people's mind. He's going to be hosting, but he got a book coming out too that's going to really feed the fans. And who knows? This might bring back the next level with WMAC Masters. That's the goal. I'd
love it. I'd love to see, some of the original ones and some of the newer competitors today doing a show together, and it'd be a blast. And I think the original fans would love it, and you'd probably get a lot of new fans too. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and keep those prayers going. So we're putting it in motion at the U.S. Capitol Classics. Which is August 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, which is one of NASCAR's #1 top tournaments. So people can come out, be a part of it, see the old competitors, the old champions, and see what they have been doing and how we still are doing martial arts, but also see some of the greatest martial artists that are out there right now. And also we got movie stars coming out. We got all types of people coming out to celebrate the BAM's, Quest for the Dragon Star reunion of the WMAC Masters cast and crew.
That's cool. We will definitely put a link for that on the show notes when the show comes out. So I'm curious now to jump ahead a little. What led to the motivational speaking? How did that become part of your life?
Well, I don't know. That's just from teaching. I just love helping and empowering people. I mean, once again, the Bruce Lee thing inspired me to just want to give my heart, my soul. And I don't know, my instructor told me one time when I was younger, I was just a selfish little teacher, just teaching. He said, man, you have such a presence where you can go ahead and tell someone to jump out the window and they would do it. And now you need to use that for something good.
Very cool. Okay.
And that's what led to it. So now that's what I focus on to empower people, inspire people, and just, use my gift to uplift the next generation.
Very cool. Nice. And I will definitely, like I said, I'll put a link to your website out there and everything too. So I'm curious now, you've been, competing for quite a while and been in martial arts most of your life. What are your thoughts on MMA and the UFC? And are you a fan at all?
Well, my thoughts is that we created a sport called Point MMA.
Okay.
That's what I got on the cover of Black Belt magazine for. It's called Point MMA. Are you technically ready? It's a wholesome approach to being able to do MMA because it's not going anywhere. And the UFC has made martial arts more popular than anything before its time.
Mm-hmm.
So you got it. It's everywhere. It's going to be there. So what we can do, and you can see how the traditional martial artists are coming in and bringing it in more as an athletic sport. You can see the traditions trying to come in. It doesn't take away from the violence and the gore. We created Point MMA because we didn't want to reinforce the negative violence, not just that was happening in the street, but also, to take away and bring that to the kids. You can't have them being in there being beat up in cages and all that stuff. So
right.
We work with so many people, created Point MMA. Black Belt magazine called it the wholesome approach for kids, and it will save our kids because we're not trying to make fighters for the cage. We're trying to make fighters for life.
Okay, cool. First I've heard about that, so I'll have to do a little research into that. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, me and my wife put it together. And now they have there's a youth MMA league that's trying to make MMA a sport, and they be doing world championships all over the world, Italy, everywhere. And we just united with them through the help of Arlene Lemus, the Olympic gold medalist, where we united. And now our sport is a B-level tier competition for anybody that don't want to get caught up into the beating and banging. But it's really point fighting. That's what it is. It's point fighting with ground control.
Okay.
So that's really what it is. Just because at one time, I think reason why MMA became so big, because the sparring and all the stuff, martial arts became so commercial. They were trying to take away the fighting, and MMA got in because people knew that at the core, martial arts fighting makes you better. And because people were taking it back, taking it away, and it was becoming so commercial, it got in through the gap. And now that's what we got right now. And we wanted to not just give them that option. We wanted to give them a more technical option where we can really make sure you develop your technique and your skill, and you can stop your technique an inch before impact.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the website right now, thepointmma.com. Very cool. Yeah, I will add that link to my list also. All right. So next question, who would you put, and you don't have to pick 4, you don't have to, but I mean, who were some martial artists that you would put on your Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Kimber Johnson, my wife.
Nice.
My kids. That's what I would put there because they're my heroes.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Messiah Johnson, Zarion Johnson, Naila Johnson, Marco Johnson. I would put my family on my Mount Rushmore because they inspired me to get up and do what I'm doing.
I'm assuming they're all involved in martial arts heavily too?
Yeah, my wife runs the school with me. She's the creator of Point MMA as well.
Okay. In all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that really stands out for you that you've learned?
Flow in harmony with the universe.
Nice. Good answer. All right. Now these next ones, you cannot pick anything you've been involved in. So first of all, do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Anything by Master Oyama.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Right. How about a favorite martial arts video game? Were you ever a gamer?
Tekken. My wife used to cheat me in that all the time.
Nice. God, I haven't played Tekken in years. That was fun. I actually worked in a retail store when that game came out, and we'd set it up in the electronics department and play it on our breaks. So used to love that game. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Martial arts TV show. Kung Fu.
Okay. Classic. So I got to ask, since you were a fan of the original, did you ever watch the one in the early 90s, the Kung Fu, The Legend Continues?
No.
Okay.
I just watched the old one.
All right. Not many people watched. It's probably why it didn't last that long. Not many people watched the sequel like I did. So, all right. And how about a favorite martial arts movie?
Chinese Connection.
I knew you were going to say that. Nice. It's a good one. Good one. And this final question, this one, now it doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, but is there any movie you've seen that just you think has an amazing fight scene?
I have to pick Sonny Chiba, Street Fighter.
Nice.
#1.
Very cool. Sonny Chiba. I got that. Haven't heard that name on here in a while. That's cool. He's got some great movies. So, all right, cool. So anything else before I let you go? Anything else that we haven't covered? I know I got links for everything. I got links for your website, for your school, for your Point MMA. Anything else? I'll put a link to your IMDb page and everything. And anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up here?
Well, no, probably just at the Capitol Classics, along with the reunion. We'll also have a social entrepreneurship seminar coming up to really bring about social change to help, bring about things in the community that can empower our youth.
Okay.
Because we're also doing a $1 million scholarship drive where our goal is to give away 1 million scholarships.
Wow.
A Point MMA. That's our ultimate goal.
My son actually just moved to Arlington, so maybe I'll have to plan a trip out there and come out for the tournament. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's one of the big ones. So, and it hasn't been going on since COVID. So you expect a big turnout to happen.
Nice.
Because it's been on hiatus for about 2 years now because of COVID.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds about right. Because I think the Diamond Nationals happened this year for the first time in a few years too. So that's good. I'm glad they're starting to come back. So I just want to thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I love everything you're involved in. I love what you're doing for everyone and what you're doing with your organization and your the kids stuff and everything. And just, it's so cool that you're continuing to do that through martial arts and continued success and everything. But I will send you links when the show's ready to go on. It'll be probably about a month before this episode comes out. But I just want to thank you for your time, and I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I thank you too. I mean, it's probably the first interview that we tried to stay away from the negativity. It was mentioned, but we talked more about the positivity and the principles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad. I really appreciate that because, like I said, sometimes that's talked about more than we talking about the transformation and so forth.
Right. I always try to keep it positive. I've had some guests with some controversial stuff, and I try to steer it away from that and try to keep as much as I can away from the negativity. And I want it to be a positive show and want people to enjoy it. And I'm glad people, so far it's been, positive feedback from listeners. So I keep doing it the way I'm doing it.
Keep it up. And I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that a whole lot. So yeah, I'm pumped up too. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.